Folks, welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. I am your host, Denny Carter. I'm Ron Burgundy. I'm hosting today because RotoPet is somewhere, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I am joined, as we are on all Thursdays, by my favorite Zoomer on planet Earth, Kyle Dvorchak. We are going to talk about all sorts of newsy items over the past 48 hours. It actually was kind of shocking, the number of news items that we had to discuss here. And we're going to break down my recent article on the Rotoworld site based on hyper-efficient offenses and who could benefit from those offenses. Kyle and I may have some divergent thoughts there on who is going to reap the benefits from those offenses. We'll get to that later in the show. But Kyle, it is strange, I will say, that Pat Daugherty is missing in action, refusing to show up for this show at the same time that Aaron Rodgers has refused to show up for Jets minicamp. What's going on with that, do you think?
Well, I mean, we can only assume the two have some sort of aligned belief, some reason that they share together for not being at their respective jobs, their duties to their coworkers, and I'd call us teammates. So I see a lot of similarities between the two, and you know, where there's smoke, there's fire, I think. So what we can only assume, whatever Rodgers is doing, Pat's probably there.
Pat's there. That's the only thing that we can assume right now is that they are together. I postulated the other day online that Aaron Rodgers is doing a rich guy space flight. You know how people with a lot of excess disposable income will pay a lot of money to go like 6 inches outside the earth and be like, hey, I was in space. And so Pat might be doing that, you know, and good for Pat. Space Pat, many are calling him. But yeah, they clearly are. No, it's not as interesting, actually. The real story is that Pat Daugherty is grinding in Alabama, trying to get the Rotoworld Draft Guide finished and published so that you can go to your local grocery store or pharmacy or wherever else you buy these things, and you can purchase one, because, folks, it has a lot of good stuff in there to prepare for the 2024 fantasy football season, including rankings up the wazoo. Like nobody has more rankings than us. Kyle was good enough to take that on and would occasionally text me and say, "Am I sure about this ranking?" And which I took as a compliment, because it meant that I refused to be a sheep. You know, I'm not going with the rankings mob. So thank you for that, Kyle. I appreciate it.
Yeah, in regards to Aaron Rodgers, RotoPat, we also can't, like, Aaron Rodgers didn't not say that he's in Birmingham, Alabama, manually entering the half PPR projections for the quarterbacks. Like, he did not say that. I'm not saying that's what he's doing, but also I haven't seen a photo Pat took of everyone in the room with him at the time. He could have been right outside of camera shot the last time I FaceTimed with him. So, like, also possible that Aaron Rodgers just like needs to do some editing, needs to make sure we've got all of our I's dotted, T's crossed for the Rotoworld magazine.
Well, look, the Athletic's Diana Rossini was the first to have the news that Rodgers would not be at Jets minicamp at all. Because at first it was just the 1 day deal, and he didn't show up for the first day. I guess the assumption was that would not last, that he would eventually show up. And this, of course, is after Rodgers attended all of OTAs and, you know, was very much present and was making all the throws and looking fully recovered from his 2023 Achilles injury. But yeah, Diana Rossini reported that he would not show up at all for minicamp. And she said it is because, quote, he prefers to be somewhere else.
That's such a good quote. It is so good. Like, damn, that's almost 100% true. That is as accurate and as blunt as you can be. He definitely doesn't want to be there because there's somewhere else in the world that he wants to be more. It's perfect.
Right. And yeah, it's not an emergency, you know, it's not like a family thing. It's not like a health issue. like it was very clear from Diana Rossini and others reporting on this that our guy Aaron, he just found something that was more interesting than Jets minicamp, and he decided to do that instead. I have been told online by Jets fans that this is no big deal. Poor Robert Saleh, head coach of the Jets.
Oh man, imagine being Robert Saleh. Just the most thankless, brutally, everyone hates you and it's mostly not your fault kind of situation.
Yeah. I mean, he had to stand in front of a gaggle of reporters and say, that, hey, this was all planned, even though on the first day it didn't seem planned. But on the second day, it suddenly was very much planned.
Yeah, once he wasn't there the first day, the plan became he's not going to be there any other days.
And so on the second day, it was planned, and he had to come out and say, this is not a big deal. In fact, this is good. We like this distraction. No, I'm kidding. He didn't say that. But I mean, that kind of was the tenor of the press conference was what's the issue here? The guy plays 4 snaps last year. He's coming back from a possibly career-ending injury. This is a make or break season for literally every one of us in the building. We're all out. All of us are out if this season doesn't go right.
Yeah, that's an extra fold into the poor Robert's laws. It really is 100%. I think if they miss the playoffs this year, he's probably done. He's probably out almost for sure. I don't see how he stays.
Yeah,
and
GM's
to begin the make or break season in such a fashion, right? I feel for the guy.
Well, I mean, Rodgers said during an OTA press conference, he said, if I don't go out and do what I can do, it's probably over for us. And that's definitely true. The Jets are going to enter their 27th rebuild of the 21st century if this doesn't go well. And this is just, I feel like it's just not a great way to start. I will say there were reports that Garrett Wilson looked as alpha as ever. Yes, I'm speaking like a Gen Alpha kid because I've been listening to my 11-year-old talk to his friends too much. But Garrett Wilson looking great. Breece Hall, I believe, having his work managed a little bit. So we'll have to.
Yeah, he was out of practice at some point with something that seemed completely minor. Like when it's described as like a hockey injury, like lower body in minicamp and OTAs. I'm like, I don't know. He's 1 year. He's a running back. He's basically 7 years into his career. Go ahead, manage his load.
7 years, yes. So yeah, we obviously we'll have more on the Aaron Rodgers situation as it develops. I mean, he'll be at training camp, barring something else that comes up that it seems more interesting. And I guess that's all that matters. I guess that's all that matters. I will not cry or cope about this situation. But yeah, let's get into the news. And of course, you can hit rotoworld.com for all of your latest football related news. We have a blurb from just yesterday on Sam Darnold being named, I guess, the nominal Week 1 starter by head coach Kevin O'Connell.
This was the training camp starter. He'll be the QB1 to open training camp.
O'Connell was right.
Yeah, O'Connell was understandably kind of blasé about it. Was like, yeah, we haven't had to release an official depth chart yet. If I did, it's probably Sam Darnold. He's a veteran. He's looked good in the offseason. And he even said something about, I forget the exact quote, I want to foster a competitive environment for the quarterbacks in training camp. So it's clearly not a settled debate. But I mean, things are I would bet I would take Sam Darnold straight up over JJ McCarthy to start Week 1. Like, I think that's very clear in terms of who is in, as the Steelers would call it. They use this phrase. It became an inside phrase where everyone uses pole position. They've said that 100 times.
Pole position.
That's what they said to start Week 1. I mean, Darnold is the clear favorite to take the first snap of the season. That seems clear to me.
Yeah, the Steelers love their pole position talking.
That clearly came down as like a mandate because they've said it in like different coaches have said it and they've used it dating back months. So this clearly came down as like, hey, we want to use this phrase to describe it specifically.
That's right. Yeah, and the beat writers are also using that language. So
exactly. Yep.
Yeah, it's coming from somewhere. So I think we had a blurb last week about JJ McCarthy being brought along slowly in OTAs and then into minicamp. And having a little bit of a rough time, which of course feeds into Rotopat's skepticism of McCarthy, which I don't like, because I do think McCarthy is probably a good player long term. But at this point, I do think it would take kind of a catastrophic preseason or training camp for Darnold to lose the week 1 job.
A Darnold really bad at football? I can't imagine what that would look like. We don't have 4 years of data to suggest the guy's dreadful, god-awful at football. Can you paint a picture? Because I can only remember 1, 2, or like 1,200 attempts with the Jets and then with the Panthers that would suggest he's terrible.
With the Panthers, Kyle.
He played 2 years with the Panthers, right? He was actually good. I will not. You can give me the stats. The second, right? He was on that roster 2 years, right? The second year, he was good.
He came in and he was top 5 in completion rate over expected. He was super, super efficient in a run heavy scheme. So I don't know what that means for the Vikings. The Vikings are not going to be run heavy. That's what we know that for sure. But then he goes to San Francisco last year and he does the rehabilitation, quarterback rehabilitation thing, where you go and you meet Kyle Shanahan once and you are rehabilitated. That's how you do that. And it's a smart move. It was a smart move. But sure. in that training camp for the Niners, a couple beat writers said that Darnold looked amazing. One beat writer said, if I remember correctly, that Darnold was the best thrower of the football in the history of the San Francisco 49ers, hands down. Okay. That includes guys like, I don't know, Steve Young and Joe Montana, if you ever heard of them. And so I think that Darnold can start week 1, obviously. I think he can hold on to this gig. I think that he's good enough. He showed in Carolina that he can be a legit starter.
He was throwing, it was like a 6-game sample in which he threw, I think it was literally 23 passes per game. I have it right here. That year he threw 23.3 passes per game. He was legitimately good. Like, good in terms of like he executed what was asked of him at a high level.
Yeah.
But it was 23.3 passes per game coming off a stretch of 2018 to 2021 in which of 33 quarterbacks who dropped back at least 1,000 times, he was 33rd out of 33 in EPA per dropback and 32nd in CPOE. He was easily the worst quarterback in football for the entirety of his rookie contract. And he plays 5 hyper-managed good games. Like he did what was asked of him. There were good games. I won't take that away from him. And like he stylistically changed what he did a little bit. He threw the ball away a lot more that second year in Carolina, which to me, even though it sounds dumb, it does signal a shift from like, I'm the hero of the story, I have to play hero ball, to like, I'm going to maybe not throw a pick 6 on this play.
Yeah.
To me, I mean, the sample size of him being terrible is like 5 to 6 times greater than the sample size of him being good.
Yeah.
It's not enough for me. He needed to play an entire season of throwing a reasonable amount of passes for me to really change how I feel about him. Do I think it's possible he's changed? Like I said, stylistically, he did change a little bit of what he was doing the second year in Carolina. Do I think that is the most likely thing after having a very large sample of him being very bad with the Jets and then one truncated season, I believe, in Carolina? I can't buy into it yet. We have too much data to say he's bad for me to flip my opinion. It's possible, though. I will grant that it is possible.
I think what's changed, is, time. Lots of time has passed.
He came in the league super young, too, didn't he? He was like one of the youngest players ever drafted. Like
he was 20, I believe.
Yeah, he was young, like one of the younger 20-year-olds, too.
Like, and he was thrown right into the fire. His confidence was absolutely killed right away. I think his first pass ever was a pick 6 on Monday Night Football. Okay. Like that sort of stuff. Like a kid doesn't come back from that. And he played for a terrible team, terrible coaching, terrible play calling. I can sort of ignore that Jets stuff. I don't think, he looks like Zach Wilson in the stats. Okay. Like
that is correct. He's very Zach Wilson in the stats. We mentioned earlier, like, if the Rodgers thing bombs out, and embark on the 27th rebuild, number 25 is because of Sam Darnold.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I do understand that. I will say Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and eventually TJ Hawkinson can make a guy look okay.
Yeah.
Nick Mullins, not good. was quite bad last year, but was fun for fantasy.
Dude,
because
he was fun.
He had all those pass catching weapons. And I'm sorry, Kevin O'Connell, no matter what he says, and he's going to say, we need to be balanced. We need to establish the run. We need to do this. He's not doing that. I'm sorry. Kevin O'Connell is letting it rip. Darnold is going to throw it a lot. I am not excited about Sam Darnold as a late round guy, maybe like a super flex option with upside. Like I think that his environment is going to be really good. And again, he's going to, when in doubt, our guy Darnold is going to just throw it up to Justin Jefferson. And that's not a bad thing.
The problem is what we've seen a lot from him is when in doubt, stare down a linebacker and let him run it back, because that he loves doing that. So, I mean, I think it's possible. I think with how much the team was linked to JJ McCarthy and then lands JJ McCarthy, like the obvious connection being there and coming to fruition, I think we see McCarthy. I'd put the line at like 7.5 or 6.5 games. I think is fair. Like that's the week number we see him at is week 6, 6.5, right? Or 7.5. I think Darnold can string together some good games. I'm pretty confident he can string together some bad games. And with how little they're invested in him relative to McCarthy as the future of the franchise, obviously, I think the string of bad games will get him benched. Even if he does play at a high level, I don't think it'll last forever. And the moment it stops lasting, you pull the cord on it.
Yeah, no, I could certainly see the team shifting to McCarthy at some point, especially if things go south and they just need to see what they have in McCarthy and like get that era started. That makes sense. But I definitely think that there are some paths, some possible outcomes.
Yes,
where the Vikings they're winning enough, they're in games where where the coaching staff says, okay, we're going to stick with the veteran until the wheels come off, and maybe the wheels do come. Hey, it could. Okay, like I'm projecting Sam Darnold to be a lot better than he has been traditionally. Okay,
in for that, 100% in for that.
So it could come up, and in that case, McCarthy would be the guy. But I mean, this means that like JJ McCarthy in a super flex format is like a late round like bench stash at best, and you better have like a big bench because you're gonna have to hold on to him. I mean, you probably will have to hold on to him for a while. You know what? You don't have to hold on to, Kyle. You don't have to hold on to your love for NASCAR. Is that a good transition? Was that a good? I don't know.
We'll take it. Yeah.
It wasn't the best, but we're gonna go with it. NASCAR is back on USA Network. Find out if find out if Kyle Larson can win back-to-back races for Hendrick Motorsports this weekend in Iowa. The green flag waves at 7 p.m. Eastern time. That is, of course, the only legitimate time zone. Check it out, NASCAR on USA Network. We are back with more news. Jonathan Brooks, rookie running back for the Panthers, might be ready for training camp per head coach Dave Canales.
To me, it was less than optimistic. It was, they're bringing him on slowly. I think they said he's still got a ways to go, which is understandable. It's also still, I'd call 2 months or, a month and a half away till training camp. But it sounded like we're at best 50-50 on him being put on the PUP list for training camp, which is fine. Like you can come off that PUP list at any time during training camp. But I do think we always see this in fantasy. The moment a guy goes on training camp PUP, which like I said, you can come off, it does being in training camp, it does not affect your week 1 status. It's once get to the end of the training camp, you remain on PUP. At that point, you're out 4 games. We see that the market in terms of ADP does not care. The moment they go on PUP, they freak out and drop 8 or 10 picks. So I'm thinking right now, is this maybe a good time to just pump the brakes a little bit on Jonathan Brooks? Because he goes in a really fun range of like 0 RB guys that are like the Pittsburgh running backs, like James Conner, Raheem Mostert, like that range of guys who I like all of them because I load up on receivers early and I'm like, I don't want to draft Najee Harris in the 4th round. I can get him in the 7th or 8th and be like, dude punches in the clock and puts you 1,200 yards up on the season at that price. I like that when I have 7 receivers already. So where are you at with Jonathan Brooks?
I mean, if he's put on PUP, he's falling like at least a round, maybe more, depending on the kind of league you're in, whether it's like fantasy football obsessives or more casual players. So I think that he should be able to be a value, but again, he's going to be like a bench stash probably for a while until he hopefully seizes control of that backfield. But I think that also opens up an avenue for a guy like Chuba Hubbard to be kind of interesting from a volume standpoint. I mean, Canales has talked a couple times this offseason about how run heavy he wants to be in Carolina, which is a little weird, right? Because that's not how he operated in Tampa. I mean, Tampa had a pretty strong pass rate over expected last year, and with Baker Mayfield. So, but maybe this is his way of protecting Bryce Young.
I would think so, yeah.
From further psychic damage and physical damage as well, and sort of guarding against that and making sure that he's like a good game manager who doesn't have to win the game for the Panthers. So maybe that's why they're going to establish it. Maybe that's why they're going to be run heavy. And if so, look, I know Chuba Hubbard, not sexy. I get it. Like, it's not a pick where you're like, oh heck yes, I'm in on the Hubbard train. Like, it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be fun. But there is a chance if Brooks misses the early part of the season or is limited, that Hubbard is getting 20 touches a game in this Panthers offense. And you could do a lot worse per the ADP, I think.
Who do you think, let's say Jonathan Brooks doesn't play in week 1, not even on the published, say he's an active week 1, and I'm pretty confident Nick Chubb is going to be an active week 1. Which backup spot starter, Jerome Ford or Chuba Hubbard, is projected for more points in week 1?
I'd say Hubbard. I don't
think so.
I don't buy the Ford thing. They said that last year too, where they were like, yeah, Ford's the guy, definitely. Like, he's going to get all the action if Chubb misses any time. And that didn't happen. So,
and Kareem Hunt goal line touchdown number 2. And, right on cue. So I agree with you. I think Chuba would be that guy. He's like a certain player for a certain kind of team composition. If you've loaded up on like the rookie running backs, you've got, say, like a hero RB team. You take Bijan, and then you really push the second running back spot. Take a Chuba Hubbard and then load up on like Marshawn Lloyd's, Kamani Vidal's, Tyrone Tracy's. I have no clue if any of those 3 guys I just named are honestly like even active week 1, right? Like, if they're not playing special teams and you're the 3rd or 4th running back, they might scratch you for a week or 2 or whatever. I'm sure Chuba Hubbard is there, and I'm sure if Jonathan Brooks doesn't play, probably even if he does, we're getting 1 to 2 usable weeks from Chuba, if not maybe slightly more. So for the right kind of team, he's valuable.
Exactly. Yeah, I would say that Brooks is, I think, a heavy favorite to be dominating backfield touches by mid-season.
Yes,
and certainly by the second half of the season. Maybe. I mean, I'm a little in the weeds here, but week 12, something in that range. That's we've seen this before, right? Where rookies start off slow, they're managed very carefully by the coaching staff. Especially if they're coming off an injury, especially if they're banged up, right? And then they're kind of let loose late in the season. I could definitely see that being the path that Jonathan Brooks follows. So I think he's he's going to be a smart pick, but you're going to have patience. And if you have a short bench in your league, it's probably going to be hard to hold on to him at some points, because you're going to say, okay, all right, wait a second. Chuba Hubbard just saw 23 touches this week, and Brooks was limited to 19 snaps. So, you're going to have to certainly be patient. So that'll be something to monitor. I do think the Carolina backfield should be of great fantasy interest. I know that sounds funny, but I think this.
No, I totally agree. Like, I'm very curious, like, what's the DraftKings price for week 1 Chuba Hubbard? Are they seeing that he goes late in best ball drafts and they leave him at 4,600 and he's the starter? And then, I mean, for selfish financial purposes, I'm hoping, like you said, by midpoint in the season, Jonathan Brooks, who was a really good prospect, he was the RB1 prospect, and we know that running backs, you want to squeeze all the juice out of them early, and he's coming off an ACL tear, and he's still the clear RB1 prospect. Like, he's a really good prospect, in my opinion. If that guy's getting all the touches in week 8, he's going to be, in terms of like the DraftKings price you're paying for him, you're going to be paying a lot. So I agree. This is actually a fun backfield.
Oh man, my galaxy brain has already been activated for week 1 DFS. Not satiated by golf, apparently. John Harbaugh said this week that the Ravens planned on using Derrick Henry in a similar fashion to how he was used in Tennessee. This might not be, the most breaking news of all time, but I do think that it's noteworthy because the Ravens have typically split up backfield work during the Lamar Jackson era. One would think that acquiring Derrick Henry would change that calculus or that formula. But I don't think that was ever an absolute guarantee, especially considering Henry's age and like his massive usage with the Titans over the years. But Harbaugh said, yeah, like he said, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, I saw what happens when you give him the ball a lot and it wears down defenses, this and that. Maybe that's not quite analytics, not quite spreadsheet stuff, but we'll go with it. We'll go with it for now.
Sure.
Does this change? Does this comment about Henry's usage in the Baltimore offense change the way you see him at all?
I would say it doesn't change how I see him. It is a good wake-up call that, like, if Derrick Henry does get all the work, like, I don't think this is actually changed how I believe. Like, I'm not going into the projections and changing his percent of team carries, but it's a good reminder that if he does get all the team carries, and I haven't drafted this guy like once, I could be in for a very long season. So I actually do think I should start mixing him in because I think in your article, you're like, yeah, it wouldn't be absurd to see him get to 20 touchdowns. This is a team that funnels touches inside the 5 and at the goal line to the running backs. And those guys have great success with that because defending Lamar Jackson is terrifying, even though, and this is something I think going into last year, Lawrence Jackson pointed out to me, it's like, Lamar like never actually keeps it at the goal line. He always gives it away. But because the threat is so great, it always works giving it away. That guy always scores. And it's been total jabronis up until this point. And now they have Derrick Henry. So I'm going to try and mix him in a little bit. I think the way receivers are being drafted is appropriate in that they're all going very early and you want to still be buying them. I don't think I want to have no Derrick Henry. I don't know if I want to have much. I still think you want to be primarily targeting receivers in those early rounds. But like, I can imagine Derrick Henry rushing for a lot of yards and a bunch of touchdowns. In my mind's eye, I can picture something like that. So I'm going to try and mix him in a little bit.
I like him as a 3rd round pick. You can get him in the 3rd round, right? I mean,
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, and if I go, 2 receivers and then Henry and then a couple more receivers, I don't hate that based on that touchdown upside. I mean, the Ravens are a smart team. I don't think that they're going to acquire Derrick Henry and then be like, hey, Justice Hill, you're getting this carry from the 4-yard line. I mean, they're going to give it to him, and he's like the most effective short yardage rusher of a generation. I see good things if he can hold up injury wise. I mean, look, he's a special kind of player. I actually wrote a piece a couple years ago about how careful the Titans were with managing him so that he could take that brutal workload that he got. And so I do think that sort of thing will extend his playing career longer than you would think, especially for like a bruising back like that. But I think if he stays healthy, I want him on my teams. I'm having major FOMO when I don't end up with him. So we'll see how that goes into training camp. We'll do one more, and then I'm going to tell you about the U.S. Open. Juwan Johnson has suffered what is described as a lower leg injury and is out basically indefinitely for the Saints. I guess we'll see if he's going to need surgery or if he's going to be available for training camp. I know that the Saints did try out a guy who we're familiar with as UFL DFS degenerates, Sal Cannella of the Arlington Renegades tried out for the Saints. Of course, everybody knows Sal Cannella led all tight ends in receptions and yards in the UFL and led the whole league in touchdowns. In touchdown receptions, I should say. So anyway, they are trying out tight ends. Does this mean, Kyle, that the Taysom steam continues? The summer of Taysom continues unabated?
So I think I believe he is undergoing, I think they called it foot surgery is what the official thing is. I don't think that changes what we've heard about the timeline, but if you were curious, that is what's going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
So curiously, last year when Juwan missed, I believe it was weeks 5 through, maybe it was 4 through 7. It was a 4-game stretch. So we saw career highs by wide margins in Taysom Hill's usage as like a true route running, pass catching tight end. Regardless of where he lined up at, he was getting it was 4 games. It was just shy or just around 40% route rates. And then the final 2 games before Juwan comes back, 62 and 71%. Even the 40% would be an insane number for Taysom Hill, gadget player, to run routes at. He never does this. Not how he plays. The 60 and 70s is like true, not full-time tight end, but like somewhere between like part-time plus type of tight end stuff. On the other hand, he didn't run the ball nearly as much. And he's also pretty good at that. So I think this is maybe how we convince RotoPat to draft Taysom Hill is that this will smooth out the curve when he starts playing a slightly more typical role. I mean, his role is the least typical. I mean, it's like him in that 1 year of Cordell Patterson or like a Tavon Austin year or something. Like it's the least typical role you could ever possibly find in fantasy. It's going to be, at least for the early part of the season, even if Juwan is like able to make it back midway through training camp, I think this is still more routes for Taysom either way. It's going to smooth out the curve. So it's not a 5-carry, 90-yard, 2-touchdown game, and then a catchless 2 for 15, no touchdown game. You can probably pencil him in for a catch or 2 a game while Juwan's out and still some carries. But if he's getting fewer carries, I think this just changes the way the curve looks. Like it just becomes more playable in redraft, but a little less spiky, which is a little maybe less fun for best ball.
I don't think that his ADP is going to spike because I think that Taysom is largely seen as just like a gadget, like frustrating fantasy option. And we talked about him ad nauseum on a recent episode. So if folks want to see that, they can go back. I think maybe 2 weeks ago.
Sounds right.
I will say that if we can get, 15 routes a game for Taysom Hill, it changes things. It changes dramatically because, like you said, you can smooth over the times he doesn't plunge into the end zone from the 2-yard line. Like if you can get that, you're cooking with oil. So the Taysom
and there's also the chance that they continue to do, like, it was a 4-game sample last year. It's very possible that the way the defenses were playing them in those games didn't perfectly align with Taysom carries, and they played him as semi-traditional tight end. But it's very possible that he also still goes out and runs the routes, but also gets the carries. Like that Taysom is terrifying because then you're like, you have the floor and the ceiling combo. I don't think we're getting that Taysom. But like, oh man, a kid can dream. That Taysom is fun because like
so much fun.
I already find him kind of fun, but like imagine just penciling him in for 2 to 3 catches, but also the carries. So both better, and he's better in best ball, and he's better than that in redraft, and he's better in best ball again. That would be good.
He's better in all formats this way. Yeah. And I want to emphasize, Taysom Hill apparently has had multiple meetings, personal one-on-one meetings with new offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak. I just want to put that out there. Okay. Please file that away in your mind. All right. Pinehurst number 2 hosts the best golfers on the planet for this year's U.S. Open. Find out if Scotty Scheffler or Rory McIlroy can break through this year after top 3 finishes at the U.S. Open in 2023. It's the 124th U.S. Open, Thursday through Sunday on NBC USA and streaming, of course, on Peacock, which is what I've been watching since literally 7 o'clock this morning. I've had Peacock on every TV in the house. My kids and my wife are begging me to stop putting golf on, but I will never stop putting golf on. I have to see my guys, including I have to say this, Kyle. You know what? I have to brag about this before he collapses on Friday. I do a weekly golf segment with Brad Thomas on the betting side of things. It's called Going for the Green. And my guy that I highlighted this week was Patrick Cantlay.
And first right now is like an hour ago, right?
Patrick Cantlay shot 5 under, 65 today. And he was leading the tournament as of the start of this podcast. I don't know if anything has changed, but he's in the clubhouse, played really well today. Thank you, Patrick, for making me not look stupid for at least one day keep it up. All right, we're gonna hit on a couple more news items. And
I can give you a quick news item
yeah,
that was like right before we got on, give or
Okay.
take, is Kamara. They're saying he's like walked out. He's basically holding out right now. I think
Okay.
he's entering a contract year, and Saints are probably broke in the coming years, as they always are. I think the thing is, it made me think of like, well, the games Kamara misses, Taysom gets more carries. Of course, I related it back to Taysom the moment I saw it. But it's something that I at least thought related to the Taysom Hill stuff. I'm not really sure what leverage Kamara has in the situation. He's at an like iconically devalued position in the modern NFL meta, and he's coming off of like years and years of a downturn in efficiency. But man, what if Taysom Hill gets more touches?
This is becoming the Taysom Hill podcast, folks.
Yeah. Draft Kendre Miller too. He didn't do anything as a rookie. Don't really care. I mean, I care a little bit. I'd love to have had him see him do anything, but like the other option is Jamal Williams. So, you know, in your mid to late, pretty late, you know, round best ball drafts, there's some juice there.
That's it. By the way, producer Adam informs us that Patrick Cantlay is still leading at 5 under. So we're in it. We're in it to win it, folks. My other showdown picks did not work out, but Cantlay did. All right, well, we'll do one more news item here. I want to talk about the Giants backfield. USA Today's Art Stapleton said that rookie running back Tyrone Tracy Jr. is, quote, making a push to be the Giants' back on passing downs. This to me is not welcome news because I tend to really like Devin Singletary. And again, like Chuba Hubbard, not the most appealing name or profile, whatever. Okay, the kids don't like Devin Singletary. I don't care. As an elderly millennial, I'm in on Singletary, and here's why. Brian Daboll, the head coach of the Giants, coordinated the Buffalo offense when Singletary was there, and he said, "Look, Devin Singletary knows the system." And if you know anything about how we talk about system knowers on the show, you're going to say, well, this is good. This is good because coaches, they love nothing more, especially at running back, than a system knower, just someone who is familiar with this. It's why Zeke Elliott is going to be good. It's going to be fun for fantasy this year because he knows the system in and out. Okay. And that's what Devin Singletary knows coming into this Daboll-centric offense for the Giants. But if Tracy does emerge as the pass-catching back, then of course that lops off all the upside for Singletary. So how are you handling this Giants backfield, if at all, Kyle?
So at first I like Tyrone Tracy coming out of college. I'm a sucker for a converted wide receiver to running back. I think like David Johnson, who was like 6'1", 225 or something, was like either a high school or an early college receiver. That one hits, and I'm chasing the dragon for the rest of my life. But like that is almost certainly just the converted wide receiver running back, indicative of a skill that not every running back has, and that is extremely valuable for fantasy. I don't think it's a 1-to-1 conversion of playing receiver to being a pass catching running back, but like, I'm going to guess it helps. You don't have to run the analytics, say like, hey, a guy whose career was catching passes until now is going to also do that at a different position well. So if you can tell me that this guy who was extremely efficient as a runner in his sixth season in college, but his only season as a running back, as a true running back, and he can catch passes, and he's on a backfield where Devin Singletary and Eric Gray are the only thing that stand in his way to a starting role, I'm going to like that. And that's exactly where he lands. We're already getting hype. It was one beat reporter quote. And then I believe Daboll also said, though, a week or two ago, that he was just impressed that he came in and quickly knew the playbook. It was the same thing. He doesn't know the system like he played in it before. Like I forgot about that for Singletary in Buffalo. But he did quickly pick up on the things he needs to be picking up on. Like you said, they love that. He can catch passes out of the backfield. We love that. Competition for touches is very low. We love that. So I was a little worried that I would get over my skis on Tracy because he fits an archetype that I really like. Daboll seems to like him. Beat reporters seem to have positive things to say about him. I am so far behind my skis. We have to continue to roll forward to get over them because I want to draft a lot of this guy.
I tend to think that Singletary can do enough to hold off Tracy. I mean, Singletary was good when he finally got the lead back role in Houston last year. It took too long for the Texans to shift to Singletary from Dameon Pierce, way too long. But when they did, they instantly became a better offense. Singletary has always had really good peripherals in some respects, like yards before contact per carry, which is, it's correlated pretty closely correlated to long runs, to big runs. And so Singletary has always popped in that category, even in Buffalo when he was sharing the backfield workload. I think Singletary, boring. I get it, boring pick, but I mean, for me, like, beggars can't be choosers. And at that point in the draft, I'm like dying for some running back touches, for like some guaranteed running back touches. So I'm okay taking him, but I will be interested to see how these running backs are used in training camp, how they're talked about headed into the season. And you're right about Tracy. I mean, he checks a lot of boxes for a potentially exciting guy. I think things have to break just right. And I honestly think that Singletary would have to miss time with an injury or something in order for Tracy to get like a real look, like a real opportunity to lead the backfield.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I still think Singletary is actually a perfectly fine pick because, like I said, I love hammering receivers and just taking the 0 RB backs that used to be priced in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. Like the Najee Harris, he projects for a lot of touches, used to be very expensive. Seems relatively reasonable right now. So I still like his archetype for what we have to pay for it. But I think this creates a little more risk that, like, what if he isn't getting passing downs and the offense, which probably isn't good, you're just getting he could get goal line work. There will be none of it because they'll be bad. And then he doesn't get passing work. This creates a little bit of risk, but like, I still think he's perfectly draftable. Like, I still think he fits the archetype of players that if you're drafting the way I'm drafting, which is wide receiver heavy early, yeah, give me those touches. And I still think he projects to get a lot of touches in week 1. Here's the only sort of maybe we shouldn't draft Devin Singletary I have for you. Would you take him or Zeke?
Oh, that's a tough one. My two most boring guys.
I know.
I'd probably take Zeke.
I think I would too. Would you take him or, let's say, Brian Robinson?
Singletary.
Okay. Were you? I don't even remember. I assume you were, I believe, slightly Eckler over Robinson, but let's do that. Singletary versus Eckler also.
Oh, Singletary. I don't. The Washington backfield is so gross to me. Here's
my last one: Singletary versus Tajay Spears. I think I can get you on this one.
Yeah, Spears. I'll go with Spears.
There are some other guys I like in that range. Singletary's a fine pick. I'm still going to draft him.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to end the show here with a quick discussion of my recent piece published on Rotoworld, looking at guys who I believe are at least slightly undervalued, if not very much undervalued in early drafts and in best ball, based on the efficiency of their offenses. I talked about the Rams. I talked about the Cowboys, the Ravens, and weirdly the Seahawks. But you're going to have to read the piece to know why I mentioned the Seahawks. We're going to start with the Rams. Some of the stats I looked at were, scoring rate, expected offensive points added, lots of nerdy stuff, positive play rate, points above average per play. I mean, just crazy stat, like spreadsheet nerddom all the way down.
It's funny because the baseball people must accidentally turn this show on and they're like, oh, that's nothing, dude. Like, wait till you see WOBA plus over expected. You're going to lose your mind.
Yeah, no, baseball stats. I stumbled across like an advanced MLB stat thing and I was like, wait, what?
You got vertigo. You're immediately like, I don't know where I am. What's going on?
I mean, they have like an over expected stat for the speed in which the ball comes off the bat.
Yeah, exit velo, I assume.
My God.
The launch angle stuff. These people are sick.
That's wild. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, definitely got into the weeds with the numbers from last year, and I came to the conclusion, Kyle, and feel free to push back or to tell me that I'm completely off base here, but I think Cooper Kupp is being a little bit undervalued in the 11 games last season where both Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua were active. Nacua saw 92 targets to 89 targets for Kupp, and the receivers had almost identical target per route run rates. They were neck and neck in a lot of other peripheral stats like yards per route run and yak per reception. I I think that Nacua is being properly valued, but I think that Kupp can be drafted a little higher. I guess it's just the injury stuff, right? It's got to be just the injury history for Kupp.
I did have them like nearly identical, within 1%. I think it was like 1.6% on targets per route run. From what I saw, Nacua smoked Kupp in yards per route run. It was bad. It was like 267 to 177, almost a full yard
when they played
per route
together.
Run. Yeah, it was only, I can give you the exact weeks. I believe it is week 5 through the wild card round, minus week 18. I believe Kupp got rested, and minus, I believe, week 10, which Kupp left almost instantly. Horrific for DFS purposes, if you remember that one. So
yes, I do.
Yeah. So five through wild card minus 2 games that I think are fair to throw out, because Kupp literally didn't play one. They got rest in week 18, but Nacua got to chase the records. And one that Kupp left early also felt fair to throw out, to give credit to him. So still earning targets at a high rate, still earning first read targets. I think he is a meaningful part of the offense, but he's getting up there in age, coming off of multiple injury plague riddled seasons, and the efficiency fell off a meaningful degree last year. His PFF receiving grade was also a lot lower than Puka Nacua's, and he was really poor in ESPN's open score. I still think he's a large part of an offense that I want to buy, because they're good at passing the football and produce yards, and they throw to 2 guys and that's it. But I think there's a pretty big gap between Puka and Kupp, who I think is a fine pick, but I think there were some red flags there last year.
Yeah, for sure. And I am scared of the constant injuries. I mean, the Cooper Kupp, basically every time he catches it, you're afraid that he's hurt himself. I will say that during Kupp's like insane fantasy season, I guess 2021, he was like the only game in town in the red zone for this team, and got so many targets inside the 20 and then inside the 10. That role has been partly stripped from him with more usage for Puka in that area of the field. But even though Kupp missed a bunch of games last year, he still tied Puka for inside the 10 targets. So
that's really good.
I think he maintains some of that touchdown based intrigue. I think that can get him there, even if maybe he misses a little time. All right, we're going to shift over to the Cowboys and then wrap it up here. I believe you said that Brandin Cooks is washed. Is this?
Buddy, he is squeaky clean levels washed.
Well, I mentioned him as a possible beneficiary from week 9 to 18 last season. Cooks saw 23% of the team's air yards. That's not terrible. Like I said in the article, that might not seem like a lot, but only 19 wideouts had more air yards than Cook over that span. The Cowboys averaged 276 intended air yards per game. That was the 5th highest mark in the NFL last year. And honestly, I think with this team, like telling us that they don't care about running the ball by having Rico Dowdle and Zeke Elliott as their main running backs, I think that sort of intended air yard stat could actually go up, could actually increase this year. And so a guy like Cooks could accidentally fall into a bunch of downfield opportunities for a team that never stops throwing. But you say, no, he's washed.
I think I concede that. I mean, that's what he did last year, essentially. He fell into a bunch of long plays because he gets a lot of snaps on a team that throws the ball often and well, which is awesome. They're a great team. And he scored a bunch of touchdowns. He scored, I believe, 8 touchdowns, which was a pretty high clip for not being a highly targeted player. But like, you are banking on just purely trying to run hot on long plays for a guy who goes in a range that isn't free. He was really rough last year. He's 66th in yards per route run, outside the top 100 in ESPN's open score, 69th in targets per route run. And this is on a team that if he had any juice, he could have been a dominant number 2 receiver, because they just had the corpse of Michael Gallup, who they had to then like half bench for Jalen Tolbert at the end of the season. And he really couldn't make a meaningful impact in the nerd metrics. He still got there from a fantasy perspective because of the spike weeks, the many touchdowns. But I worry that like the moment the touchdowns dry up, and I'm going to project them to score fewer points. I don't think the Cowboys lead the league in scoring this year. I still think they're a top 10 team, but I don't think they're going to lead the league in scoring. Dak's not one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL. I think he's one of like 8 or 9. There are like 5 teams I picked to score more points than them. So I don't think they're going to lead the NFL in scoring. The moment those touchdowns dry up, I'm looking at Brandon Cooks like, buddy, you are the one losing those touchdowns.
I mean, I got a lot of pushback from the article. People said, why would you take Cooks? He has an ADP of wide receiver 60. So I feel like that's pretty low. But they said, why would you take Cooks when you can just simply take Jalen Tolbert later?
I'm a little worried about Tolbert. He's not very good either.
I know. Look, the targets, this team's going to pass a lot, and the targets got to go somewhere. And I would say that the most obvious way to play this, if you really think the Cowboys are going to go insanely pass heavy this year, is just to draft Jake Ferguson and be done.
I like this one.
Yeah, I mentioned him in the piece. Jake Ferguson in no way profiles as like a great target commander. Okay. As someone who like gets open and like has to be thrown to. That's not the case. But guess what? It doesn't matter for fantasy at all. We like our tight ends to be exactly like Jake Ferguson, which is to run 7 yards, to turn around, and to be hit with a pass between the numbers by Dak Prescott and to fall down. And that's good. And that's fine. We like that. You know, the Kyle Pitts profile running 40 yards downfield. Hopefully he catches one day. That'd be cool. But that's not, I don't want to rely on that. So Ferguson is probably the way to play this. But I think the Cowboys offense is going to be kind of weird for fantasy in that they're going to throw so much. And that's kind of why I like Zeke Elliott. I think that he is probably the best pass catching back in this offense and is just going to fall into a bunch of targets just like he did in New England. So that's my rant on the Cowboys.
I'm down for both of the other two, quote, ancillary pieces, Jake. You know, there's one primary piece in CeeDee Lamb and then a bunch of other guys. I'm totally down for the Jake Ferguson, and as nasty as it is, the Zeke causes. I think they're both good picks.
I'm so glad that you are on that train because it makes me a little more confident in my almost absurd Zeke take. That'll do it. Check out my article on rotoworld.com on efficient offenses. I will have more in the coming weeks. Kyle, I'm actually going to Greece in July, so I will be not writing for at least half of July. That'll be weird, but I'm going to try to just jam the site with all sorts of writing content before then, and get that done. We'll be back. Me and RotoPat will be back on Tuesday. He will be back from wherever he is with Aaron Rodgers. We're going to have to see. We're going to have to ask him. Honestly, we're going to have to ask him. So we will see you next week. For Kyle Dvorchak, I am Denny Carter. Thank you for joining us. Talk to you soon.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com. And I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched. Or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Rotoworld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.